Hello and welcome back to the channel. This will be the start of the Tuesday series from Startup Week. I'll start with the Tuesday morning sessions. They were absolutely great. Again, when it comes to the audio and video quality, I had no control over the audio. And again, the video quality was all in an effort to save space on my phone so that I could get these sessions recorded. I forgot to state this for Monday, getting everything started, but I have the full clips of all of the presentations that I was able to record from Startup Week. So if you find a presentation from a particular day that you would like to see the entire thing of, please let me know. I would be happy to share them on the channel. And without further ado, here are the speakers from Tuesday morning.
Please welcome Joy Hibbs.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks. It's so good to see you all. And some familiar faces and some new faces. So I get today to talk about two of my very favorite things: small business and the Wichita Chamber. And man, if we guys talk about education too, I'd just be in heaven all day long. So for those of you who don't know, I am the founder and president of Cornerstone Data, and we just celebrated 15 years in Wichita. We are a small business, but we have a national presence. So we're not a startup, but sometimes I try to think of ourselves as a startup because even just 3 years ago, we made a massive pivot in our offerings and launched entirely new products and services. So we love the startup work that you're all doing when you start new companies. And 15 years ago, when I moved to Wichita, I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself, so I started Cornerstone. My husband Eric, who's in the front row, and I've been married almost 30 years, and in that time, we have almost always owned a small business. He owned one in Colorado when we lived there, an architecture firm that I got to help him with just a little bit. He was really the mastermind behind it. Then we moved here and I started Cornerstone, and then 7 years ago, he took over his father's company, Tech Systems Group. So now for 7 years, we both own our own small businesses. So you might say we eat, sleep, and breathe small businesses. And sometimes we look at each other and think we've lost our minds, but truthfully, we love it. This year, it's been a distinct privilege to be the chair of the board for the Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce. And I like to joke that you have to be really smart to get paid at the Wichita Chamber, which is why John Rolfe, our president, and our wonderful staff who are all here today do. I do it for free because I'm not that smart.
We love you though.
I once assumed that a chamber was just for big business. Not long after I started Cornerstone, Eric's employer invited us to join their table for the annual Chamber Honors Night. And on the way home, we discussed the evening, and Eric told me I should look at joining the chamber. And I tried, but nobody returned my call. Then in 2011, somebody did. I still remember my first event, a small business owner roundtable. The location, high-touch technologies. The topic, how to recruit and retain employees. Now, I had just moved out of my home office. I had one part-time staff member. My business cards were printed on my home printer. I was intimidated, and I almost didn't go. And every year since, a photo of that event has popped up in my Facebook feed. By the way, if you're a new business, the chamber takes a lot of great pictures in 3 minutes that you can hold on to. But every year when that picture pops up, we're sitting there with Wayne Chambers, who would fill to be one of the chairs and other incredible small business members, I've been reminded how glad I am that I went. That day, I discovered one of Wichita's greatest assets, a chamber made up of other fantastic business leaders who care deeply about their companies, their employees, their customers, and the direction of the city and our state. I found people who are compassionate and giving, and I found people who honorably carry the weight of business ownership. A study by the Shapiro Group found that when consumers know a business is a member of a local chamber, that business enjoys a 49% increase in favorability and a 73% increase in awareness. And consumers are 80% more likely to purchase from that business in the future. So think about that. Just by being a member of the chamber, consumers are 80% more likely to shop with you. So I'm going to unpack these ideas a little bit more, and I've asked another very special person to join me. Karma Mason is the chair of the Kansas Chamber. She and her husband Gary started ISI Environmental in Wichita over their kitchen table in 1990, and they grew it to 150 employees in 4 locations over 30 years. They were also a Small Business Award winner. And Karma is a super smart lady, geologist, studied hydrology, one of those STEM people. But prior to her work at the Kansas Chamber, Karma was instrumental at the Wichita Chamber. That's where we became friends. She served as the vice chair of advocacy for several years and worked with me on the Small Business Committee as well. So would you help me welcome Karma to the stage to talk about her. I told her we should act like we're sitting in our spur talking about the things we talk about, but she thought we might get in trouble if we did that. So we'll try and keep it clean. All right, so Karma, I talked about a business environment that's good for growth. So I want to start by talking about advocacy work, which you've had a lot to do with. So before I do that, I want to talk to you about how we kind of do that at the chamber. So we have a government relations committee that Karma chaired for years, and there's representatives from across the membership on that committee. And then they do a survey of all of our members, and then they develop a federal, state, and local agenda based on input from that membership, and then that gets approved by the board. And so then all of the items on that agenda instruct the staff and the lobbyists that work with us when they go to advocate for business. And then you may have heard that we also have a PAC affiliate. So the PAC affiliate takes those agendas and helps determine, along with some civility clauses about those candidates, and will they be a good voice for business and also ethical. And then we make decisions about whom we might endorse in a race or not. So Karma, you led that process for several years. I can't remember how many. I'm not going to try and say. But what are some things that you learned in the process?
Oh boy, there was so much. My company is a small business as well. I mean, Joyce said it's 150, well, we're probably more like 120 now. And a lot of that is workforce challenges that all of us seem to have. But certainly coming into the Government Relations Committee and eventually chairing that committee, I learned a lot about how small business can advocate for itself. And certainly one of those things is that as a small business involved with the chamber, through the chamber you do have a voice in Topeka. Otherwise, it's very hard as an individual business owner to have a significant presence in Topeka when the legislature is in session, which is going to start in January next year. So most of us as small business owners are looking to our business and taking care of business. Just don't have time to go and lobby. We don't even know the legislators a lot of times. So With the chamber, you become a collective with other small businesses, also mid-sized businesses and large businesses to have a significant voice. And people like Jason Watkins and Jessica Lucas, who are lobbyists for the Wichita Chamber, they take care of the business in Topeka to represent business interests. And we'll come back and report the highlights and sometimes the lowlights to the chamber membership. But through the chamber, you have more clout in Topeka to protect your business interests.
How is everyone this morning? Fantastic. So first I want to tell you a little bit about Thrive. We cater just to small business owners. I am the executive business advisor here in Kansas. I am the only one here. So we specialize in small business software, but also small business digital marketing. And we have a lot of free resources as well as we're also a Google Career partner. But what I'd like to do is introduce our speaker, Alan Eichenberger. Alan works at the Capital Access Center at SBDC. With 25 years as a professional banker, he's a result-driven person who believes 100% in the concept of teams working together to achieve common goals and objectives. Most of his working career has involved commercial banking and responsibilities that include sales, finance, operations, management, policy, compliance, and executive leadership. Hire great people and give them the resources and support they need to be successful. Now, help me welcome Alan.
Thanks for having me here today. It's a great honor to be part of this organization and to be here today on behalf of the Capital Access Center, which is a division of the Kansas Small Business Development Center. My presentation is in very fine. It's got an Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to ask this group to move over here so that you won't be able to see if I'm pointing on this or over here. So if I could please have everybody move over here to this side. I just don't want to have anybody miss out on anything. What we have up here is an example, and this spreadsheet will fit any industry, okay? If you have an industry that it doesn't fit, I just happen to have a restaurant up here, and then I'm going to take you through what we do to kind of help you get loan committee ready, because there's a lot of things. What commercial loan officers want to know is what's behind the numbers. You can give them your 3-year projections on sales, and you say you do $1 million this year, you do $1.2 million, you do $1.3 million, and when they look at it, they go, what makes up that number? Well, we kind of put it together. And maybe some consultant told you that's how you should do it. That's not how you want to do it. Okay? How you want to do it is have the assumptions behind all those sales numbers so that they can see how many widgets you're selling, how many, this is a particular restaurant, what kind of lunches you're selling, what kind of menu you're selling, all those kind of things. So we're going to kind of walk through this and kind of help you a little bit, okay? So if I can make this thing work. I'm going to have to move over to the right to the required startup funds. This is, and if you might, you can probably go up just to move it up just a little bit, the whole, there you go. Go too high, back down. There you go, perfect. So this particular company wanted to buy an existing restaurant building, okay? And they were paying $200,000 for the building. It's amortized purchase building with some restaurant equipment, okay? And then they also needed to buy additional equipment for $30,000. This $30,000 here, and the $5,000 for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. That's $235,000 that they're going to need help on. So this top side here is what you're going to spend the money on, and then below is where the money's going to be funded from. Okay, that's what we call in banking in accounting source and use of funds. Okay, so you have to remember that. That's how it kind of works. That's what banking would say. So salary and wages right here was 25. That's 3 months of salaries. Use the blue tab down here. You can figure that. We'll come back to that. And then one first year's premium. A lot of things you guys are doing. How many are already running a business here? Fantastic. How many are wanting to start a new business? Fantastic. These are important things that whether you're running a business, existing today, or you're starting a business, this is going to help you understand where you need to be and what you want to do. So we can take you, what we'll do is if you have an existing business, we'll take your current revenues and expenses, I'll spread those out separate of this spreadsheet, and then we'll extrapolate that into this. So when you go to your bank and you ask for additional loans, or you want to revamp your business, you can explain it. Now, a business plan on all of this is super important because it has all your ideas, all your thoughts, all those questions. Our business plan is really designed to answer the loan officer's questions. Matter of fact, those questions in that business plan is what we think is going to be what I think is going to be asked, and not all of them, but the majority of them. So very important to go with this. So you look at legal and accounting for a startup, rent deposits, utility deposits, supplies, advertising, licensing, $1,500 to $27,000, working capital, which is fixed operating expenses times 3 months. And so let's go to the next tab for salaries. This is where, so all that working capital is kind of explaining to the banker of where the money's, what are we going to need this for, okay? Oops.
It's having a fit. Just give it a sec.
It's buffering just a bit.
It's buffering. There it goes.
Okay, so take it up just a little bit.
Oh, goodness. That, there. Oh, okay.
I feel like this would be a funny meme, like,
There you go. So, this particular owner, he needs $3,000 for his personal living expenses, because he owns a home, he's got a car payment, he needs to have some cash flow coming from his business, so he tells the banker that I need this much cash. You don't want to put $5,000 on there when you're starting out, do you? No, you want to put it as minimal as possible so that you can build your cash flow for your business. And then this particular person's going to hire a chef, and he's going to work 45 hours, and this thing automatically calculates $11 an hour for one chef. That's what he pays him on a monthly basis. This column is monthly. This is for 1 year, so it takes it times 12, puts it to an annual basis. And then see this 3% up here and 3 here? Bankers want to know that you're going to actually increase your expenses by 3% or by some percent, okay? Because everything does go up. And everybody's been to Dylan's. Oh my gosh. So, if you would just scroll down a little bit, so we've got a prep cook, then we got servers, and we've got their hourly rate because they get tips and what they're being paid annually. And if you go down a little farther, it takes that salary and adds up everything together and automatically figures the Social Security and all these other benefits that have to be paid out with that from the owner of the business. So if you're looking at $8,587. So when we have that first tab, when we talk about salaries for 3 months, that's 3 times this $8,000. And what this does is help keep this organized. Does that look like it's kind of organized to you guys? So you can kind of say, here's the people I'm going to hire, or here's the people I already have hired, what I'm paying them, and this is what I have to pay in benefits. So it's really helpful on that part. And so you can see that overall salary for a year is going to be $103,000, and then that'll show up on the income statement. All of this waterfalls into a cash flow statement, and a income statement, and a balance sheet, so that we can talk to bankers and print that out and share it with them. So next tab is the fixed operating expenses. And this is really important because all of these expenses are ongoing on a monthly basis that you're going to have. This one's 100, advertising's 100, credit card expense. If you're going to take credit cards, most of you will. That's going to be expense on that. Dues and subscriptions, entertainment. I don't know why we have entertainment in there for 200, but there is a good reason. You need to explain it. Liability insurance is good for the property and for both the real estate and the liability. It's got internet, it's got office expenses, it's got repairs. This is an older building. He went ahead and built in some money for repairs for the building, which is really important because you don't want to all of a sudden not have enough cash when something comes up that you're not budgeting. Bankers want to know when you have a mature facility that you're buying that there's going to be some things that are going to come up, right? You're not unexpected. And if you're showing that to the banker on the front end, he understands that you're thinking ahead, you're planning. Supplies, 15, I think that's mostly paper products. Travel, utilities, property taxes, security, and software. So all those things are important. So that, if you go up just a little bit, so that's $6,500. And then the other part of the expenses is depreciation, when it roughly back out. This depreciation, which is an add back, okay, it's not a cash flow expense, but it also tells the banker how much depreciation is going to be depreciated on those assets. And then you've got, and actually you use that amount here of depreciation towards your principal of your interest and your P&I payment. This is just interest only here for these 3 loans, so $2,700. And so when you kind of add this all together, your fixed costs on a month cover taking care of your salaries and you can see it comes up. Adds up pretty quickly. So let's talk about projected sales. Does anybody have any questions on any of those? Am I going too fast? No? Okay. So this was interesting here is that we wanted to make sure that we had enough background on what we were using for. They have a small lunch, and she had these average ticket sizes of 2 different sizes. So, you know, their ticket size is $12 or $16. You can see that their cost of the product was 35% here. And so he had an average of 280 people here per month. So that's 20 people per average per day for 6 days. Okay? And the same thing with here for 6 days. So you can see that we can average, we can kind of calculate how many people are coming in for the year, 2,800 here, and 57 here, for January through March. This is really a 12-month. We don't really start in the middle of the year. You can, but most of the time we don't do it that way from this point, because you want to give a nice 12-month trailing experience on this. And then you go over a little bit, we also have the dinners, which, can you slide it up a little bit? Which is a small dinner. We got a small dinner, and we have a regular dinner, so you can see it's 18 to 25 average ticket. And they're only open for dinner 4 days a week compared to 6 days a week for lunch. So it's kind of a different strategy the way they were working. But that explains to the banker, they're not open, 6 days a week on everything. They're just open in the evening, so they're cutting their labor back and managing that labor appropriately by not being open from lunch and then bringing people back in for dinner. So they're only open 4 days for dinner and bringing them back in. So it really works pretty effectively. You can see that you took, I forgot to explain this on the front, but $25, times 480, and you add that up times 5,700 equals 144,000 of gross revenue. That does not include the variable cost. So that'll show up on the income statement, okay? And then you got your bar tab, which is the most profitable piece that's in here as far as percentage. And so you got your average tickets, about $30, 30 days, 4 days a week. They kind of pushed it back. And then they have private bookings, which is $25. They got 30 on the average, except January and December. So they've got some revenues there. They've got coffee and dessert beverages. People just come in for that. And so they kind of calculate that all together. So the next part, after the sales projections, you have this all put together. That really gives you does that give you guys a good idea what's going to be sold, how much is going to be sold, what the revenues are, what the expenses are? Yeah, that's what they just.
I noticed there's not an inflation number like in the previous in the cost.
Yeah, there is. Let's go up a little bit.
There's a growth number.
Yeah, actually, it's right. 10%? It's 10% right here. See this 10% right here?
Is that a growth in business?
That's a growth in sales.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a growth in sales. So it's on there. Great question. So we'll go to the cash flow statement. This statement here is really built for manufacturing, especially when say you have a service company that you're billing out on a monthly basis. How fast you're going to collect your receivables, how fast you're paying your payables. Bank would want to typically know that you're paying your payables on time, not within the 0 to 30 days. So that gives us 100%, 100% here it is. And this is for a line of credit. If you get short on cash, you'll actually calculate at 90% what the interest rate's going to be. And then on this also is very important that bankers want to know that gross cash flow at the end, your net profit, what's going to show net profit, have you paid your income tax on this? Or for your partners. It's automatically going to calculate it in there so that you're going to distribute enough money to pay your partner's tax or you're paying your own tax. And so 25% is standard what bankers use for tax, a tax rate that's state and federal for small businesses. So just so you know that that's built in the model, we'll cover that in a little bit. The cash flow statement is a statement that shows beginning cash, and then it goes through and says, here's how many people understand cash flow statements? Okay, so some of you may not, so I'm going to cover that a little bit. So a cash flow statement says, here's where we started, here's how much cash we had in the bank, and then we sold $47,000 worth of sales here. We had cost of goods at 14, we had salaries, we had fixed costs, and we had some loan payments, and so we ended up with outflows of all of this for 31. So our net cash flow, when you subtract the 2, is 15, so you went to 43. And then you take the 43, start here, and you just go over every month, okay? It starts from the beginning, it goes to the end, and then back up. Does that kind of explain what the cash flow statement is? Okay? Good.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you to all who come out and support Startup Week. People keep thinking I'm going to talk, and I'm not talking at all. Instead, I'm inviting these three wonderful people to the stage. Come on up, guys. These are people who are familiar in our network, so I'm sure a lot of you know them. But what's really cool is they all got to some great places, but in some very different ways. And that's what we really wanted to focus on today. All the different ways that you can get to where you want to go. Because there's no one path to success. So we're going to start by asking you all to tell us what made them decide to start a business.
I got the mic. All right. Well, my husband Tori started home brewing in 2010 and did some like homebrew competitions and won some medals there and just really enjoyed it. And we were on a vacation to Colorado, like in Boulder, Fort Collins, Denver area, going to all the breweries in 2012. And kind of had that conversation that a lot of young people have, I think, from Wichita. Are we going to stay in Wichita? Are we going to move? You know, what are we going to do? Do we want to? He's like, I don't really want to sit at the desk all day. He worked for an engineering consultant firm and decided that it was fun, but he didn't want to do that all day. And I said, well, I worked in nonprofit, so I was like, well, why don't you just get a job at like a brewery in Colorado? And I'll just, you know, work somewhere. And he's like, I really think I want to start something small, or I really think Wichita could use something like a small tap room, like we were visiting Colorado. Not a restaurant, not a bar, but just this kind of sense of community, beer-focused place. Kind of like, I call it like a coffee shop, but with beer. So I said, you're saying we should start a brewery? And he said, I don't know. And he thought I would just be like, well, that's ridiculous. But I said, let's do it. So we decided to, we Googled how to write a business plan. And this was in 2012. And long process, long story, but we opened in 2015.
Hi there. Knowledge as a Service is the name of my company. I have a software called Ringarang that some of you may have heard of. It's a habit formation software. And how I got into it was accidentally. So I started out in the entertainment industry. I was in Hollywood. I was in front of the camera. I had done a Disney movie called Newsies and singing and dancing in front of the camera. When I came out of that, I had a manager who picked me up. I said, okay, I want to do these kind of films and TV series. He said, well, he said in his Cuban accent, I'm going to do it the way you're doing it now. And I said, okay, so how am I going to do it? He goes, well, and then he sets me up to meeting a bunch of people where I start writing scripts. I wanted to command my own destiny more. That's still not starting a business exactly. It was just like trying to command my destiny. I could sell scripts and create film and TV projects. Ultimately, another guy I was working with, who goes by BW, Brent Wayne Barkley, who's from Wichita, Kansas, had gone out to Hollywood, and he had the same mutual mentor, Pedro. His name was Pedro Dupuy. And we decided to become this writing team, then a producing team, and then we had this idea, BW's idea actually, for this software that ultimately became Ringaring. That was really just meant to keep fan bases engaged 6 days a week in between TV episodes. It was the wild idea he had. It was trivia based. Long story short, years later, it got taken through clinical trials on how to change human behavior. Right? It was like, how does that happen? Not by any way we could have scripted. See what I did there? We were scripting. No, we could not have figured it out. It just happened that way through being really passionate about a new, interesting way of engaging people, and ultimately we formed a business about 4.5 years ago called Knowledge as a Service, brought it here to his hometown of Wichita. I got married a 1.5 years ago, now I am a Wichitan.
How's it going, everybody? Miguel Johns here. I've been in the diabetes tech space since college, and I remember sitting in my class, Chronic Disease Prevention and Management. I was in that course because I was passionate about diabetes and health, coming from a long family history of people with chronic conditions, including my dad and grandmothers. And I came across a documentary our professor showed us that day called Escape Fire, and it was all about the U.S. healthcare system. And it had physicians, it had patients, it had people who worked in insurance, all pretty much calling out for help. The healthcare system was in flames, and they needed people to rise up and start working on these problems because it was unsustainable. And that just spoke to my heart. I remember leaving that classroom that day. I knew nothing about business. My degree was in exercise science. And I went home and started Googling and YouTubing, what does it mean to run a business? But since that day, I've been working in the diabetes technology space, creating multiple different apps and technologies and approaches, and slowly learning little by little what it takes to create something sustainable in the healthcare market, which on its own is a beast.
Well, our next question you guys kind of answered. You know, what was your first step? Apparently Google is where everyone goes. Who knew?
Or being in a movie.
Or being in a movie, there you go. But where did you go next? How did you feel like you made it a real business?
Yeah, for me, I was actually in Indiana playing football, so when college ended, I moved back to Wichita, and luckily for me, at the time, there was an entrepreneurial renaissance happening. So E2E, which is now Nexus, was just getting started. 1 Million Cups had just started. In some of those early days, it was unbelievable to see the crowd at 1 Million Cups. There's a whole bunch of these small events happening. A lot of people were starting to back entrepreneurs, people like Steven at Lawn Buddy, people like Ramsey at Midwest Esports. That was all taking place. So I was just fortunate enough to have the right timing to be involved in all of that. I got into E2E with some amazing other cohort companies, and honestly, people just lifted me up throughout the past 6 years that I've been here working on this. And so events like this, Wichita Startup Week, are more signs that this continues to happen. We're bringing the right people together to make things possible for entrepreneurs who have crazy ideas.
Yeah. Well, what I'm going to guess that Miguel went through that maybe he hasn't mentioned, so I'll take this on. It doesn't happen just because you go take a first step. What happens is you get really into an idea, and then you're willing to just talk to other people about it and fail at it and have them say no to you 100 times, but you are so into it that you're willing to keep having the conversation with people. That's the first step always. So I told you the commercial about how I got into this, but that was a very long path. What the real first step was to making it a business was me seeing the possibility that this simple little trivia game could actually change people's lives. And when I hooked into that with my heart, that's when I said, oh, I got to tell everybody about this. And then at first I started telling everybody about it, like networking functions. And at the time, it's a longer story, but at the time I thought it was a toy that needed to have Hasbro and Mattel use it for kids. It could pop up and parents could program it so that it could engage them. It was going to be a G.I. Joe mission communicator. I was talking to Hasbro, and it just had to do, how did I talk to Hasbro? I wrote a letter back then to somebody, and that was one of 50 different approaches to companies that I thought might work with my idea, and they just happened to respond. And that's how things start, and then it goes snowballs from there. The only way you get through those rejections of all the no's is you just are so into it.
Yeah, so after Googling how to write a business plan, because I think that's important. Like, you don't have to know anything about how to start a business. Like, most people don't. Like, it'd be great if one of us would have went to business school, but we didn't. So immediately made an appointment with the SBA, got connected to the Small Business Development Center. That's kind of how we try to figure out like the path. We also worked with, we're lucky to have a really supportive, strong, collaborative brewing community. So reached out to Wichita Brewing Company and Walnut River, El Dorado was getting started at the time. And also outside of Wichita, just kind of reaching out to those that were doing something. This tap we're actually the first tap room to open in Wichita, meaning we didn't serve food, we're not a full bar, we just really are beer focused. We do have other things, we don't drink beer, we have wine, cider, we make a hard seltzer now, we've grown and expanded, but in the early days that was like new, and food trucks were new. We had food trucks come out, and it was just getting the word out about that. But really just having the idea, getting connected with some of these like free, awesome services, and then really the next thing we did was before we really even started writing the business plan, my husband Tori reached out to House of Schwan, which in Kansas you have a third-party distributor, so they're the Budweiser distributor in town, and they work with most of the local craft breweries. So when you sell to them, and then they sell to like the bars and restaurants. So we made an appointment with them. We like put on his nice shirt and tie, which is not like a craft, like we don't usually we're wearing t-shirts, and he got all dressed up and had his cooler full of homebrew, and he went around to places like the Anchor and Public and Monarch, and he's like, I want the bar managers and the staff to try the beer, because it's one thing if you have a product that you're making or something that you want to do, it's really easy for like your friends and family to be like, oh, this is so good, you could totally sell this. But to like have this, and he knew they wouldn't tell him to his face. Like he like got, and everyone's like, no, this is really good. And he got feedback afterward and was like, do you think I could sell this? Do you think this would work? And they're like, oh yeah, man. And he's like, it doesn't just taste like some dude's homebrew, And it's like, no, they can do it. So that was kind of like, a lot of people don't know that, but that's kind of that was really the first step, and that was his idea. And he was like, can we even do this? So.
Excellent. So you guys all drummed up communities, boards, we had excitement out there. But then it gets to the point where you need money. So how did you get your initial funding? I think you all have a very unique story there.
Yeah, so we went to banks, which at the time, River City Brewing and Wichita Brewing were the only breweries in Wichita, and they were also brew pubs, so they had full menu, food service, bar service, so it could be considered a restaurant if you're not into craft beer, right? So very new concept for Wichita, and there's a lot of upfront costs. We have to get tanks and equipment to make the beer. Things have to be have a floor drain, and you have to do construction where we're going to go into. So it's a lot of things people don't understand really what it is that you want to do. And so we went to 5 banks, and we were turned down by all 5 banks. And we were working with the SBA, and they turned us on to SCED, South Central Kansas Economic Development, and we were able to work with them to get some loans. Because, for us, we really didn't want to have investors, but we knew that was kind of like the next step. But we were able to get loans from different places in order to get started, and then about a year, maybe 2 years after we were starting to make a profit, and there was more breweries out there, then the bank was like, okay, well maybe we can take these over. So we were able to kind of go from there, and then we worked with Emprise Bank later to help us out with some things, and then our recent expansion, we worked with the SBA on a loan for that. So we're lucky we didn't have to have investors, but I know that was like our next. We just kind of had a list of like what's next. And I will say, after getting turned down 5 times, we're like, maybe this isn't what we're supposed to do. But I know others have been like way more than 5, so I wanted to just throw that number out there.
Loan money is actually cheaper, just so you all know. Cheaper than investors. You will pay more back from investors at the end. I also wanted to add to Stacy's story, just so you guys know how hard it is with alcohol. You can't start selling until you have a commercial property, and nobody will count alcohol as collateral because they can't sell it in Kansas. So it's a tough sell.
I thought everything was easier with alcohol.
No, not in Kansas.
So I was the opposite. We brought on investors, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. Who is anybody here actually had investment that you brought in for a venture idea? So a handful of people. Okay. And who else here is considering bringing on investors? Nobody else even considering it. Okay. Yeah. Very good. All right. So then what I'm going to say to you may not make any difference to you. But what I did was my business partner and I, BW and I, thought, oh my gosh, we had all the money we had got poured into it, and so we were broke. And so then we said, how do we get investment? And there was a guy that we met who said, I've done this before. I've raised money. It's not a venture capital guy, not even an angel guy. He was a guy who would essentially run like boiler rooms. You know, if you know, by reputation, that sounds really bad. Boiler room being like people are getting on the phone and they're just making calls to investors. Hey, we got this Regulation D Rule 50C offering. That's just an SEC regulation that makes you exempt from having to be a public company that's publicly regulated. So you can be exempt and sell privately if you follow these clear rules. And they're really difficult to follow in a lot of ways. But if those of you who might be interested in it, tap me on the shoulder at some point and I'll share with you more of the detail on it. In summary, what we did is we followed this guy's advice and got on the phone with people we knew and said, can you refer me to someone else you know who might invest in this thing? And that person referred us to someone else. Pretty soon we had a few investors of like $10,000, $20,000. And then they started rolling, and then pretty soon we got really good at it, and then the SEC came in, and not SEC, it was a state regulator, came in and said, cut that out, you guys are starting to act like a public company. And we had to figure out the rules, we got scared, But that's kind of the way it works, is you gotta just figure out what are the rules, and there are a lot of gray areas. So again, anybody, if you're interested in that, I welcome you to talk to me about it.
I raised investor capital as well, and we still do. But for us, it was, again, piggybacking on the momentum that was happening in Wichita. I was fortunate enough to speak at one of the chamber events in December when Daymond John came to town, I think back in 2016. And of course, Daymond John being on Shark Tank, that was my whole focus. Like, Daymond John is the guy. Daymond got to pitch Daymond John. Turns out he couldn't even invest in any companies outside of what he was doing on the show at the time. However, there were some other investors on stage, and so I gave a presentation, and that was my first breakthrough. But for me, the route I tell other entrepreneurs, especially if you're just getting started, you're a first-time founder, it's going to take some investment capital to create whatever you're creating. You've got to really find one true financier who believes in you, and believes in you in a way where the traditional rules of investment, they're not going to apply those to you. Because if you go to an angel group or a venture capital group, they're going to have a spreadsheet, and they're going to say, what's your revenue, what's your traction, what's your history as a founder, what's your product, and all these requirements that for a first-time founder, you might be like, well, that's what I'm coming to you for. I need the investment to reach all these landmarks. So what I found to be a successful way to approach this is find that one person who's got some deep pockets, who truly believes in you as a person, believes in your future, and wants to invest in that future no matter the return of the business. Yeah. They want to see you, they have something in themselves that is a desire to give back and to give other people opportunities. That's a great investor for your first go-around. And if you can find one of those, then you can work collaboratively with them to reach the more sophisticated landmarks that can then take you and open doors to an institutional